David Michael Carrillo has produced 13 albums and has toured internationally, ministering to numerous Christian denominations through workshops, concerts, and speaking engagements. In his first book, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, David shares his personal journey of growing up with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. David, thank you so much for being with us today. Glad you could be here.
Thank you, very kindly.
For those who may be watching, I know everybody has kind of heard of ADHD, but can you tell us exactly what it is? What are some of the signs of it?
Well, ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And the typical signs is 1, our attention span shorter than an inch in a ruler. 2, we're the most hyper people you'll find. Even if you tie us down, we're still moving. And 3, we are also the most impulsive people. We will act on impulse and think about what we're doing later, usually when we're in trouble.
Now, I'm not quite sure how old you are, but you look fairly young. But I'm wondering, you know, he does. You look like a baby.
I'm 42.
Okay. Well, okay, so you're 42. So I'm wondering, back then, when you had this, because this was something that you had while you were growing up, did they even know that something like that existed?
Well, they used to call it minimal brain dysfunction and hyperkinesis, which when you say it like that, you think I should be locked up somewhere, you know. And again, back in the 70s, I got diagnosed in 71, 72. It was still kind of like, well, he's just an unruly boy. Discipline him, he'll learn, you know, to behave. Right. And it's like, well, I was raised in a Christian home, and I had plenty of discipline, so it's not that I didn't lack that. But at the time, they didn't really know what it was. They just knew that, well, there's a problem with him. That's all they could tell my parents.
It is a much more common diagnosis now than it was back then for people. And obviously, I think people know the warning signs a little bit more. But for you back then, how did it affect your childhood and growing up? It
affected me in 4 areas of my life. It affected me academically, socially, emotionally, and spiritually. Academically, with ADHD, you also have other disabilities. I had learning disabilities, Tourette syndrome. Learning for me was a challenge. It would be like, you know, remember internet used to be dial-up? What forever took. Okay, for me, that was how I learned. It was slow. It didn't get in quick enough. But those who don't have learning disabilities, they're like internet hooked up to cable. You get it right away. So while the class was progressing in their schoolwork, I was still trying to digest the first question that was being asked. So that was a challenge, was academically, I just wasn't in sync with my peers. Socially, I was that odd man out kind of person. Everyone was over here, and I was thinking and doing things over here. I didn't fit in. I would hear certain things that, like definitions, you know, like my mom, here's an example, straighten up your room. Well, I took literally, and for an hour, pushed on all walls of my room thinking, is this room straightened enough?
Oh,
now,
wow.
Really?
Her term meant clean it up.
Right. Sure.
Mine was push the walls up, you know. So imagine, you know, having people say just common phrases, you know, that you understand it, but me, I might take it differently and respond what I think you just said.
Right. Now, I can imagine what was going on with, you know, your mom thinking this and what was going on in your mind? Because I'm thinking as a kid, you know, you're like you said, you know you're not fitting in. This must have done a lot to your psyche.
Yeah, well, emotionally, you know, I started noticing that I wasn't like my other peers. I was behind in my schoolwork. Socially, I was not accepted. I was rejected. And it got to the point where I would, you know, come home and yell at the top of my voice to the Lord, why did you make me then? You know, because I felt so out of place, you know, and as I'm watching my friends progress and you know, move on in their schooling, and I felt like I was failing every time. And if I got a D, for me, that meant dandy, you know.
Right.
And so, you know, and so I felt like, well, I felt like I was cursed. I felt like what I have is a curse because it's affected me in my life, academically, socially, emotionally. Our emotions, we just have such wide range, you know, of emotions at one moment.
So what turned it around for you? Because you obviously didn't come here today just because you wanted to vent about having ADHD.
No. You know what turned around for me was, you know, the Lord began to move me into ministry. And actually, this is my 20th year anniversary of being in the ministry, and itinerant ministry. And I just started singing, and, you know, that was great. The big turnaround for me was the Columbine. I got asked to sing at one of the students' funeral. And as I was singing, you know, a song I wrote, the Lord began to speak to my heart because I was critical of myself. My fingers were bony, I got a quiet voice. And as I'm playing the guitar, the Lord says, guess who made those fingers that can play the guitar like that? And the voice you don't like to hear, you're going to now be singing in front of 1 million+ people to bring healing to a situation. And it began to awaken me like, wow, Lord, there is a purpose. Right. There is a purpose you have. If I say, well, here's my stumbling blocks, Lord, what do you want to do with them? And he's turned them into my stepping stones, which here I am now, you know, sharing about the very thing I hated about my life, watching it minister and bring hope and healing to countless of people that, you know, out of my own brokenness, people are finding healing, you know.
Speaking of healing, is that something that you asked God at one point? God, can you please just heal me of this thing?
I think every person who has this, I've asked that question one way or the other, you know, and for some reason the Lord said, no, I want to use it, you know. Having the hyper, you know, energetic, even at my age, you know, it keeps me going as I travel on the road and flying here and flying there. And having ADHD, I've learned to realize that I think outside the box a lot of the times. I really see the world in a widescreen way, where most people without ADHD kind of see it narrow. I see panoramic view, I see living color. I'm going to see it from a different perspective than most people will. So to me now, it's a blessing.
Right.
There are lots of families out there who have kids with ADHD. There are lots of families out there who have kids who interact with kids with ADHD. What do you tell them in terms of how to interact with those kids to maybe be a little bit more compassionate, be a little bit more understanding of their plight without just oozing this sympathy that, you know, no kid, if you're a kid, you're not sitting around saying, oh, I want everybody to feel sorry for me all the time.
No, you don't. You want to fit in.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things you might want to keep in mind is, because we're so sensitive, don't tease someone with ADHD. Okay. We will take it so personally. That, you know, sticks and stones break your bones, I hated that saying because it didn't work for me, because when I was picked on, it hit me so hard. Sure.
Yeah.
For the parents who have, you know, a child with ADHD, love them. My mother, even though back then they didn't know what it was, she prayed me through a lot. You know, and she loved me through a lot, because again, I found at home at least there was some security, where at school it was a hostile environment. Realize that your friend or your child or your spouse, because now adults, you know, later in life are getting diagnosed, and love them and accept them. This is really a blessing if you allow the Lord to use it, you know. But love them, accept them, you know. I have a friend who's got 2 children, one with ADHD. I recognized myself right away, and I knew with one child I have to interact differently, but with this one, because it's kids moving around and can't stay focused, I know exactly how to communicate to keep their attention, because I know exactly what they're going through. I know exactly how they're thinking and feeling.
What about coping skills? What are some of the things you have found have been able to help you cope with ADHD? You
know, I hold on to the verse from which was quoted earlier, Psalms 139, verse 13, 14. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, Lord, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And the concept that, Lord, you even allowed this to be woven into my life to use for your glory and my good. There's a sense of, you know what, Lord, my life is in your hands, my purpose, my destiny. Psalms 139, David starts off, Lord, you know me. I mean, he's pondering that you know me so well, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you're so in love with me. Even if I was trying to hide in the darkness, to you I can't hide. Right. My heart is exposed. And the idea that, Lord, you know me, even the parts I don't like about, you can still use them when I say, well, here they are.
You've written a book and a song, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made. What's been the result of those?
My goodness. I've been asked to come out to England later this year to share for the Association of Christian Teachers of the United Kingdom. I'll be going to Loftia later in the summer. And all of a sudden, invitations started coming out of the blue, you know, because I'm sharing my story not from the psychological point of view. I'm not telling you from an observation point of view. I'm telling you from ground zero, from my eyes. You know, I'm saying step in my shoes and see what my world's been like, which has helped people. Oh, now I know why my son, my daughter, my wife, my husband does this or act this way.
Right, absolutely. And I'm sure that people maybe not necessarily dealing with ADHD, but other issues that they don't feel good about themselves, they don't like themselves.
Or they've been told they're worthless or unwanted.
Absolutely.
You know.
And so very important, they need to know that they are fearfully and wonderfully made. Thank you so much for coming and being with us. All the best to you, by the way.
Thank you.
So if you'd like to connect with David, you can visit us at harvest-tv.com and click on Show Info in the menu bar to find an easy way to link to his website. Well, just a quick reminder, we want to hear from you. If you need prayer or want to share a praise report, you can email us right now at live@lesea.com. LeSea Prayer Line Director Patty Ellis will be joining us shortly to pray for your needs. We'll be right back.